Okay, so we got 2 episodes of Strange New Worlds this week, so that means 2 to review. And I'm going to start with the next one, which is number 206, Lost in Translation. And it's the Kirk episode again, because it's the third Kirk we've seen, but this is the Prime Kirk. Or is it?
It was George Kirk Sr., first officer of the Kelvin.
And I'll get to that. Now, with a few questions about Kirk showing up in this episode. Is he going to meet Spock? How's that going to work? How's the whole Pike thing going to work? Because obviously Kirk was at the trial of Spock when he kidnapped the Enterprise. Will La'an tell Kirk about their adventure? And what are we going to learn about Uhura's trauma? Because, yeah, that is definitely going to get explored. So as always, I'm Al, this is the Geek In Review, and let's get to it. So the Enterprise is at the Bennings Nebula, which is a stellar nursery full of fuel that Starfleet needs, and they've built an outpost to mine it. So straight away I was thinking, it's a Living Nebula episode, they're hurting it, that's right, that thing, they've done it before. And it kinda is, and it kinda isn't. Pike's back again, and he's now fleet captain because we knew he would be, but it says it's only temporary. And the Farragut, which is a ship that has Lieutenant James Kirk on board, is now under his command as well. And he's got a shiny new Starfleet merch badge, which you'll be able to buy soon, no doubt. So while they're in the nebula, the Enterprise refuels too, which looks great. Look, it looks properly solidly good, but right as this is happening, Uhura detects a signal, but there's no log of it on the computer records. And this is definitely an Uhura episode. She's watching a how-to video Hemmer left her telling her how to service the communication system, which for some reason part of it is in the nacelle tube. Probably so Pelia can show up and tell us that she taught Hemmer.
I know. She's one of my best students.
But are we going to get more details on her this week? The refinery base is behind schedule, so number 1 is sent to get it back on track. Uhura starts to hallucinate and sees zombie Hemmer, so here we go guys. She goes to sickbay where Mbenga tells her her hallucination is, well, a hallucination. He thinks it's deuterium poisoning from being in the nacelle. And that's a new one. I mean, I don't think that's ever been brought up in Star Trek before.
Of course not. Look, I've had deuterium poisoning, and I've got...
And this is the thing that kind of bothers me a little bit about this episode is he says she needs to rest, but he doesn't give her anything to help her sleep, which I thought was a little bit odd. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. But back on the base, Pelia and number 1 find out there's been sabotage, and we get a lot of Pelia in this episode doing something that we haven't seen her do before, which is her job. But as always, we learn next to nothing about her. Uhura tries to sleep and sort of dreams seeing herself in a field with a weird noise. They're getting set up that there's an alien influence in her dreams, but we don't really know what it is yet. Now the big storyline is Kirk arrives for the 3rd time. Now I wasn't looking forward to this, but seeing Jim and Sam Kirk together, we've never really seen this kind of interaction. The closest that we've got with Kirk is with him, Spock and McCoy, but someone he's actually close to and has a real history with, I kinda did like this. Yeah, Paul Wesley isn't the best choice for Kirk, let's be honest, but he does pull it off in some scenes. And we find out that Kirk's now going to be the first officer in the Farragut, and he's the fastest person to make first officer after his dad, George Kirk, became commander of the Kelvin. So yeah, that's right. I said it, they went there. Is it an alternative timeline? I am going to get to it. But there's some tension between the Kirk boys. Sam's jealous of Jim's advancement, and Chapel is playing 3D chess with Spock. Morlich is playing 3D chess with his love life, am I right? So will Spock meet Kirk? Maybe. And she's realised that the signal, the zombies and the dream all had the same noise, but as she's the only one affected, Spock doesn't believe her. Now this would be a great setup for Spock and Kirk to meet, but it doesn't happen. He talks to Uhura instead. Very Jim Kirk of him, let's put it that way, and she totally sees it coming. She hallucinates again, seeing dozens of dead crew members, hearing the same noise before she's attacked by a shadowy figure, then snaps out of it, realising she's battering Kirk. Kirk doesn't want her to go to sickbay as she needs to explain the nose that she's just given him, which, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. And also not sure how I feel about the fact that Kirk's had deuterium poisoning as well. It seemed awful convenient.
Of course not. Look, I've had deuterium poisoning.
And then because they don't go to sickbay, instead of telling the rest of the crew about this, they decide to try and solve the mystery of the living nebula themselves. Meanwhile, back on the station, Pelia and Number 1 are still trying to get to the bottom of the sabotage and find a Starfleet redshirt who's gone a bit crazy. And while this is going on, Uhura's having another hallucination that the ship's under attack. They get hit and the bridge explodes into space, and she hears the noise again and snaps back to reality. And she's on the bridge when this happens, so Pike knows that something is up and has a sit down with her. And Kirk shows up as well, because he's looking for Uhura, as he's worked out the red shirt that they found on the station has the same symptoms as her. He goes crazy once he gets back to the Enterprise and escapes sickbay, and Uhura thinks none of this is happening. And this guy goes on a rampage, damaging the ship, knifing crew, the whole 9 yards. And while this is going on, Uhura keeps flashing in and out of reality. Meanwhile, La'an and Kirk do meet, but during the search, so there's no flirting yet. Uhura finds the rogue redshirt and decides to tell him about her past instead of just stunning him to stop him. And I mean, it doesn't work because he does blow up in the cell and it goes horribly wrong. And yeah, they really need to stop leaning into this whole trauma trek thing. Pike doesn't seem that worried that his ship's just been attacked and damaged. He literally just shrugs it off and moves on. And it's not the only time he does something like that in this episode. And Uhura's not the only one we get trauma as well. We get Kirk's background, where he talks about his dad being away when he was a kid, and why people are telling random strangers about their childhood trauma in this episode is completely beyond me, because that is twice. We also find out that Number 1 doesn't like Pelia.
You're sloppy, okay?
And this is a superior officer talking to a subordinate, remember?
You don't respect protocols, you're too loose with discipline, you don't follow orders unless you feel like it, and you have crumbs on your uniform.
Pelia says Number 1 thinks she's the smartest person in the room all the time. And when? When is she ever the smartest person in the room? Because she's hardly ever on the show. And the way that Number 1 treats Pelia in this episode, when you think about it, is pretty disgusting. Imagine your boss treated you like this because you had a history together. It's not on, and it's just not well written. Not sci-fi, but just not anything.
That is malarkey, and you know it.
And all the Pelia Number 1 stuff in this episode felt completely pointless. We didn't get any evolution of either character, and we get no more history on Pelia than we already know. Uhura's worried that she'll turn out like the rogue red shirt, and the whole scene between Kirk and Uhura was very meh. She says she's had issues since her family died in the shuttle accident, and of course she has, but we already knew that. And this running thing of Trek trauma, they just need to stop it. They've been doing it since Discovery. They didn't really do it in Picard Season 3, but for some reason, they think that everyone having trauma makes them an interesting character, and I don't think it does. So why keep doing this? But one of the highlights of the episode is Kirk does give a very Kirk Shatner speech about fighting death.
Our job puts us up against death more than is fair.
And I'll be honest, I didn't think Paul Wesley would be able to pull this off. It reminded me of the whole thing that Bones said to him about turning death into a fighting chance to live in Star Trek 3. And they get to the bottom of the nebula mystery, and is it living? Well, sort of. They don't detect any life forms, but Sam figures out that they're from another dimension, and it's pretty lucky that his first guess was 100% right. And Uhura works out that her visions mean that the gas that they're taking from the nebula is killing these creatures. So not a living nebula, but not an unliving nebula. I'll take 50% on that, don't worry. So they need to shut down the mining station that's killing the aliens, and Uhura has to revisit the crash that killed her family, because of course she does. So in the word of an ensign, Pike destroys this huge mining operation without asking for permission, and the day is saved. And yeah, that was the ending. Like, the last 15 minutes felt completely rushed, and Pike brushed off destroying this station like it was nothing. I know money doesn't exist at this time in Star Trek, but the logistics and the time and the power to make that is, not something that can be shrugged off. So the fact that they just destroy these huge structures on a whim kind of blows my mind. And for the 6th week in a row, everything's back to normal at the end of the episode as if nothing had ever happened. And we even get some extra number 1 trauma here when Pelia works out that she doesn't like her because Pelia reminds her that Hammer died. And I mean, yeah, that's 3 traumas in an episode. That's quite a lot. I guess everyone's getting them. And I was going to end this review by saying that at least they didn't fuck up the Kirk-Spock meeting. But they do meet and they don't fuck it up. So I can say, at least they didn't fuck it up. He sits down and the camera pans out before they say anything. So yeah, well done for actually showing some restraint on that. It's the one time where they thought, this could fuck with canon, let's not do it. And they've stuck to it. And another week with Pike not doing much. Everyone else not doing much either. Spock, Ortegas, Chapel and Mbenga were all on the back burner this week. So I don't think this was a terrible episode, but I don't think it was a good one either. It was just a little blah. And I'm going to talk about my opinions of this Kirk in another video, but I want to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comments below. Was this 3rd version of Kirk any different to the other 2? Which one was your favourite? I'd love to hear from you. I did like the Sam, Jim, Kirk stuff, and Cecile Gooding that plays Uhura is really good, but the show doesn't know what to do with all its characters. We could have had all the crew working together to solve this problem, but we never get that. All the Pelia number 1 stuff didn't go anywhere, and at least number 1 was on screen for more than usual. I did like it more than last week, but I wouldn't say that I enjoyed it is the right word. The show still doesn't live up to what it could be, and I think it is trapped by its own canon, hence why we didn't see Spock and Kirk do anything. And I'm thinking about doing a video on the canon stuff relating to Strange New Worlds and other Star Trek properties, so if you'd like to see that, leave a like on the video or let me know in the comments. Now I'm going to be covering the crossover episode later on today as well, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and you get notifications turned on so you don't miss it. And as always, my name's Al, thanks for watching.